Welcome to American Press Productions, independent political analysis. These are today's top stories. Evidence of Russian collusion uncovered at last. Whether or not these startling revelations could lead to jail time, or in what ways it will force Americans to re-examine how they view their politicians, is too early to tell. These are the facts so far. It has been revealed by former FBI lawyer Lisa Page that a senior Russian foreign ministry figure and a former top-level intelligence officer who is still active in the Kremlin were contacted by a British national to dig up dirt on Donald Trump at the request of the Clinton campaign. Joke presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren has called for the end of the Electoral College system to place America at the mercy of the tyranny of the majority. Fellow joke presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke has kicked off his presidential campaign by daily apologizing to journalists and crowds of people for being both white and a man. It is yet unclear if he will be forgiven. And now to today's featured story. 2 years ago, a man called a mosque in Miami and said, quote, "I'm gonna kill you," end quote. The FBI was contacted and they found that man. Searching through his phone, they found that he called a chapter of the KKK over and over again. They asked why he would do that. He responded, quote, "I do like what they're saying," end quote. This surprised investigators because the man is black. Investigators asked exactly what this black man liked about what the KKK were saying. He said it was about Islam and that he hates Muslims. Why is this 2-year-old story relevant? Because of the Christchurch mosque attack and the direction the news media has chosen to take in response to it. Some outlets are using this story as an example of how far-reaching and infectious Islamophobia can be, that even in the face of the awesome oppressive power of the white man, blacks in America can find the time and energy to dislike a culture or religion wholly unconnected to the white man. The news media are even resorting to citing FBI crime statistics, which shows that over a 10-year period, yearly anti-Muslim assaults have risen 300%, from 33 assaults in 2007 to 105 assaults in 2017. But what the news media fails to report is that the Muslim population over that same period increased from 2.3 million to 3.5 million, so the rate of assaults only doubled in that time period. The media also addressed how low those numbers actually are, even at 105 assaults for an entire year in a country of nearly 330 million people. It's just not that many, even compared to the total overall hate crime attacks. So the media reminds us that Muslims only account for 1% of the entire US population, and that their small community feels these attacks much more than you may think. But if we're going to play the game of statistical relevancy, groups who track terror attacks in the United States have found that 119 people have been killed by radical Islamic extremists. This data conveniently begins September 12, 2001, and that 106 people have been killed by far-right extremists in the same time period. This data set is presented in a way to show that both groups are bad. They both kill people. So if you are afraid of Islamic terror, perhaps you should fear the far right as well. But remember, we're playing the statistical relevancy game that the media started, which means to point out that 1% of the population has produced people who are responsible for 119 deaths from terror attacks. Meanwhile, 60% of the population has allegedly produced people who are responsible for 106 deaths from terror attacks. I say allegedly because by going over their data set for people killed by far-right extremists, they include such incidences as a black man who shot and killed 3 Baton Rouge police officers during the Black Lives Matter movement. His link to the far-right was being a sovereign citizen. There was a white college student who killed a black man. His only tie to the far-right extremist was a single racist Facebook group he was a member of. A man who killed 3 people at a Planned Parenthood was included. A father-son duo who killed a security guard during a bank robbery were included. Their tie to the far right was being supporters of the victims of Waco. Many of those included in the far right list were nothing more than anti-government groups and individuals, and not even all of them terror attacks. Using the same data that the media uses to engender sympathy and support for Muslims in America can also be used to truthfully point out that a 1% group of the US population has caused more terror attack deaths than a 60% group, which might then beg the question, do we want more of those people here? And I'd like to here point out that exactly what has led to that question being asked was started by media misrepresenting statistics and mischaracterizing groups in America, or in other words, the media lying in a search to uncover those lies. And that is the real story here, the news media lying. Because it doesn't matter how many terror attacks are committed by whatever group, if a population is told something other than the truth, they can't accurately judge any given situation themselves. Instead, they are told what to think and how to feel by being presented a curated and distorted version of the truth, which they then base their beliefs off of. But there is more to it than just the lies we are told. A mechanism of shame has recently been pushed into Western societies as well, the term Islamophobia, which has been conflated with racism and bigotry. But what does the term really mean? To be afraid of Islam? Perhaps homosexuals who prefer to not be tossed off of rooftops are Islamophobic, but for the majority of people it's simply a matter of preference, and they just don't like Islam. Any number of things have been said about Christianity, outright hatred is expressed even, yet no one accuses those people of any form of phobia, of being a bigot, or any term of hatred. In the Jewish religious text, the Talmud, it is written that Jesus, punished for the evil he has brought upon the Jewish people, is boiling in excrement, feces, and this draws no condemnation. But if a cartoonist draws a picture of the Prophet Muhammad as a joke, and a Muslim kills that cartoonist, and Muslims protest carrying signs that read, quote, "Behead those who insult Islam," end quote, all of this being in the West, it will be the person who criticizes Muslims and Islam for these actions who receives the harshest condemnation and accused of Islamophobia. There was a terror attack in the Netherlands yesterday. 3 people were killed, 3 more are in critical condition. As news media websites continue to report about the Christchurch mosque attack, the Netherlands terror attack apparently doesn't warrant front-page reporting. The articles written about it are titled something along the lines of, quote, "Dutch shooting, letter suggests motive and attack," end quote. Authorities have yet to release details of the letter, but eyewitnesses report the shooter, a Turkish Muslim, shouted Allahu Akbar. News media and government authorities describe the shooter as a loner, a loser with a criminal past. They say he is a psychopath, but not a terrorist. They say his motives are so far unclear. Juxtapose this reporting with coverage over the Christchurch shooting, where major news media outlets went so far as to link white children who use the internet with Brenton Tarrant. The threat of Islamophobia runs so deep that hardly a person in the public's eye dares to suggest that there may be a causal link that links together the Islamic terror attacks in Europe, in America, even in the Middle East, that there may be something worth criticizing in Islam itself. But that is exactly what the term Islamophobia prevents.